On November 22, 1963, the assassination of President John F. Kennedy transformed the Texas School Book Depository into one of the most examined buildings in modern history. Every floor, every window, every staircase became part of a timeline measured not in hours or even minutes, but in seconds. Inside this aging warehouse in downtown Dallas, investigators attempted to reconstruct the movements of one man, Lee Harvey Oswald. According to the official account, Oswald fired 3 shots from the 6th floor, concealed the rifle, crossed the warehouse floor, descended 4 flights of stairs, and reached the 2nd floor lunchroom in time to encounter Dallas Police Officer Marrion Baker and Building Superintendent Roy Truly. On paper, it sounds possible, but inside the building itself, another story was unfolding. Because while Oswald was supposedly descending the rear northwest stairwell, other employees were moving through that exact same space. If their testimony is accurate, then the staircase should not have been empty. Someone should have heard him. Someone should have seen him. Yet according to the witnesses, the stairwell remained silent. On the 4th floor, 2 young office workers, Victoria Adams and Sandra Stiles, had been watching the presidential motorcade from an open warehouse window. When the final shot rang out across Dealey Plaza, they did not remain in place. They moved almost immediately. Within seconds, the 2 women rushed toward the rear northwest staircase. This detail matters. Because timing is everything inside the depository. If Adams and Stiles entered the stairwell roughly 30 seconds after the final shot, then their descent would overlap almost perfectly with the route Oswald was supposedly taking from above. In the narrow confines of the old wooden staircase, footsteps should have echoed through the shaft. The women should have encountered movement from the upper floors, but they didn't. Sandra Stiles later recalled hearing no footsteps except their own. No rushing figure descending from above. No sounds crossing the landings overhead. Only silence. The rear northwest stairwell itself was narrow, enclosed, and acoustically alive. Worn wooden steps connected each floor through a vertical shaft lined with faded walls and industrial windows. Even ordinary movement could carry through the space. Yet during those critical seconds after the assassination, the staircase appeared strangely empty. For years, much of the focus remained on Victoria Adams herself. Some investigators suggested her memory of the timing may have been unreliable. But another witness stood nearby that day, a witness whose testimony often receives far less attention.
Scory Routlinger, Bound Shore I-60, Spramber, Brober, and Disable, Urbamo, Armal, V1, and Weed, Garrett, about it.
Dorothy Garner. Garner was the supervisor on the 4th floor. According to her account, Adams and Stiles left almost immediately after the shooting. Garner remained behind near the stair landing while the two younger women descended toward the lower floors. And then something important happened. Moments later, Roy Truly and Officer Marrion Baker came running up the same staircase in pursuit of a possible suspect above. Garner saw them. But between the women running down and the men rushing up, Garner reported seeing no one else. No figure descending from the 6th floor. No Lee Harvey Oswald. No hurried movement crossing the stairwell between floors. Just an empty staircase. That absence created a problem. Because if Oswald truly descended those stairs during the same narrow window of time, then multiple witnesses somehow failed to see or hear him inside one of the most confined spaces in the entire building. The contradiction deepens on the 1st floor. After reaching the lower level, Adams and Stiles claimed they encountered fellow employees William Shelley and Billy Lovelady near the rear of the building. But Shelley and Lovelady later testified that they had remained outside in Dealey Plaza for several minutes after the shooting before returning inside. If Adams and Stiles saw them immediately upon reaching the ground floor, then perhaps the women did not descend within 30 seconds after all. Perhaps more time had passed. But if more time had passed, another contradiction appears. because Dorothy Garner stated that Adams and Stiles left almost immediately after the shots. And if the women truly remained upstairs for several minutes, they should have crossed paths with Baker and Truly as those men rushed upward through the building. According to the witnesses, they didn't. The timeline begins to fracture into overlapping accounts that refuse to align perfectly with one another. And this is where the assassination story changes from a simple sequence of events into something far more uncertain. Because when measured in broad strokes, the official narrative appears coherent. But when the timeline is compressed into seconds, when individual footsteps, stair landings, and human movements are examined closely, certainty begins to dissolve. The Texas School Book Depository becomes less like a solved crime scene and more like a maze of fragmented memories. Some researchers believe the inconsistencies are evidence of deeper problems within the official investigation. Others argue the contradictions simply reflect the imperfect nature of human memory under traumatic conditions. After all, these witnesses had just experienced one of the most shocking public murders in American history. People remember trauma imperfectly. Time compresses. Details blur. Moments become difficult to separate from one another. And yet the silence inside that stairwell continues to haunt the case. Because architecture does not forget easily, the rear northwest staircase still exists in photographs, diagrams, and testimony. A narrow vertical corridor suspended between the 4th and 6th floors. A confined space where movement should have been visible. A place where footsteps should have echoed. But according to the witnesses standing closest to it that day, the staircase remained empty. Was Lee Harvey Oswald simply faster than anyone imagined? Did the confusion of the assassination distort everyone's memory of time and movement? Or do the missing seconds inside the depository point towards something unresolved, still hidden within the evidence? More than 60 years later, the building itself remains silent, and the rear northwest stairwell continues to descend through the center of the building like a question with no final answer. The mystery still lingers, lost in the echoes of the stairs.